Hi, everybody. Ooh. Testing. Hi, everybody. We're about to start. Take a seat for just a minute here. Everybody in the back there, come on here. Have a seat. We're going to start.
All good? You're streaming already? It's live? Okay, hello everyone. So, first of all, I want to thank everybody that is here. I love to see that we have a full house. Welcome to Llama Impact Hackathon. We're very, very excited to have you all here. I can't wait to see all the cool projects that everybody's going to develop in the next 3 days. So I would like to welcome the people who are still on the networking area to join the main stage so everybody can watch the talks. We have very, very cool panels prepared for you. Also, I want to welcome the people online that are watching us right now from LabLab AI worldwide. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Emanuel Iriarte. I am the AI architect at NewNative. I will be your host tonight, together with MindsDB, of course, and the rest of the LabLab AI team. So get ready for a very, very interesting evening. First, I want to give the microphone to Pavel Czech, who's co-founder of LabLab. So please, everybody, give a warm welcome to Pavel.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. First of all, thank you to MindsDB for hosting us. Amazing work. Thank you to all the sponsors and partners. So, because you're here, I think you're all winners already. That's my side of it. So big congrats for showing up. First of all, give yourself a round of applause. We've entered into an era where the way we build and operate software is just drastically different, and it's never going to be the same. It's definitely a one-way door. There's no going back, right? We're not going to be putting the genie back into the bottle. And what's exciting about this is that more people can become real builders. And that's really what got us into building LabLab.ai, building NewNative, is to give people an equal opportunity to access technology regardless of where they are. So we're all here in San Francisco and California. There's probably 100 plus people here. And at the same time, we have 1,200 people joining us online, and you can collaborate with all of them directly, right? So the real reason why AI, for me, is exciting, and all the new tech that's coming out is exciting, is that it enables people on a global level to get an equal opportunity to become builders. And the more we decentralize it, the more we offer open source solutions as well, the easier it will be to close the gap between what's possible to be built here in Silicon Valley and what other people can build globally. This also means that you have access to infinite resources. You're no longer constrained to the people that you know in your network. You can basically go and find co-founders, you can find co-builders, you can find people with similar interests. So it's really, I think, like a very tribal thing. And that's how it feels here. So it's one tribe, it's one community, and thanks to all of you for coming. Yeah. Thank you to all the partners, and we're going to have a great few days. So we're going to be building today, Saturday, and Sunday. Emmanuel, in a minute, is going to take you through all the components. Yeah. So just have a look at the event schedule. All of this is available on lablab.ai as well. So basically today, quick kickoff. We're going to have a few sessions. We're going to have a panel, a few speakers from our great sponsors and supporters. Tomorrow we kick off at 10 a.m. There's going to be breakfast, coffee, doors close at 9 p.m. Unfortunately, for today, tomorrow, there's no sleeping. So we've had events where people slept through the whole thing, or actually they worked through the whole thing, hopefully, and they slept a little bit. But you're welcome to stay for the whole day tomorrow and the day after, and obviously build. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Katie Watson-Jordan from Meta. Meta is, as I believe all know, one of the biggest supporters of the OpenAI of the open source movement. I had the same thing, I know. So thankfully, as we know, it's the opposite, right? So we have two sides of the equation here. We have a very commercial side of the equation, and we have the side of the equation that really promotes open source approaches. So I think we can be actually thankful for both. I think both are extremely valuable, and they bring progress to all of us, right? So welcome, Katie. Apologies.
No stress. The word source is particularly important, but I've done it too, so no worries. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Watson-Jordan. I am so excited to be here with you guys all this evening and over the course of this weekend. Let me just say in advance how excited I am for all of the things that you are getting ready to build. I think that the themes of this hackathon are really important for a variety of reasons, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about that when we have a panel in just a few minutes. But I hope that you know that the kinds of things that you're contributing to with this technology have very real, very lasting impact that we at Meta are super excited to see more of and to learn more about. I have the distinct privilege of being the lead of our Llama Impact program at Meta, and that includes the Llama Impact 3.1 grants, which I hope you are all familiar with, and if not, I hope that you will become familiar with over the course of this weekend. The Llama Impact program includes our inaugural Llama Impact grants, which awarded 3 $500,000 grants to phenomenal organizations, including one organization that's here with us tonight, Digital Green, as well as others who are doing work in the fields of education, environment, and open innovation using Llama around the world. We also have our Llama Impact Innovation Awards, which have given small-scale grants to organizations primarily in the Global South who are doing really, really incredible work to use Llama to directly benefit their community and to solve problems that are very tangible to people in those communities. The Llama 3.1 grants, which are open right now, are trying to essentially combine those first two programs to both do large-scale grants of up to $500,000, as well as some smaller-scale grants to continue building things that already exist. And that is what we are doing in this room this weekend. So everyone who participates in this hackathon is eligible to apply to both our regional Llama 3.1 grants as well as our global grants. The regional grants, though, are these $100,000 awards that are specifically designed to try and build on the things that are created here. And there are dozens and dozens of events like this happening all over the world that are trying to really address some very specific problems in local communities that we think this technology can play a role in contributing to solutions for. So please take a look at the Llama 3.1 Impact Grant application. Those applications are due on December 1st. I am here to answer any questions that you have about them, and thank you all in advance for all of your work over the weekend. We're excited to see it. is the information about the grants. You can go to our website also. Can I leave this up for a sec?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, so initiatives like the Impact Grant are super important. There's a number of challenges that are listed on the Hack site that we encourage everybody to focus on, and they definitely help to get access to the Impact Grants, right? So that's something that you can look at. Obviously, it's up to 100K in grants, which is amazing. And now moving forward. I would like to introduce our hosts, number one. Second of all, people who build amazing open source software as well. So welcome from MindsDB, Jorge Torres and Vibhu Sapra.
Can we plug in?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll change it. Okay. I think that's
That's it.
laptop. Yeah. Why not this one? Cool. Just kick it off.
All right. Well, thank you really for organizing this. And I don't think I've ever seen the office this packed ever. Very excited to see what you guys are going to build. A few years ago, it was also my co-founder and I hacking together something that turned into a company, and then, now we're still hacking, but started a night like this one. And I hope that many of you get to start something that will last for a long time. I'm going to share a little bit about what we built some time ago in that night that we were hacking together. And hopefully you guys get to use it, but you don't have to as well. MindsDB is an open source AI platform that can answer questions from federated enterprise data. And the problem that we see is that people have data in not just one single database, but they have them on many different data sources. And in order to build applications that can be useful for enterprises, you may have to tap into all those different data sources. MindsDB is an open source project that has more than 300,000 deployments, and please go and check it out. The problem that we see is that AI is getting ready, or is already ready, for many applications, even if innovation stalls. Let's assume that Llama 3.2 is the best that we can get. I think that now we have a building material that is different and is a material that will allow us to build new types of technologies. So even if innovation stops here, we have so much to squeeze out of this enormous potential. And we believe that AI plus data is where the next opportunity is at. Enterprise data, as I was telling you, is all over the place, siloed, et cetera, and we try to unify that. We have the intention of MindsDB is that people build minds. And a mind is an AI system that can learn and answer questions over enterprise data. And internally, it can reason, it can plan, it can query, it can curate, it can analyze, it can formulate. And that's how it gets to do those answers. Inside the mind, one of the components that Vibhu is going to be presenting is knowledge bases. And it's essential for being able to retrieve the data that a mind needs to process to answer a question. So I'm going to hand it over to Vibhu, and I'm very excited for tonight as well as tomorrow and the day after, and looking forward to see the people that get to show us the results. And of course, it's all under the hood, powered by Llama. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Jorge. We're gonna keep it quick. So, like you said, we like to hack, ship on stuff, and we're open source at the core. So, a little bit of background behind this mind concept. This is something that we were building for a customer, and they started to really like it. And I'm like, wait, we're like doing this in open source, but we haven't like packaged it or anything. And we've got this great hackathon. So. Cut back 24 hours ago, we've like got really spaghetti code for you. But yeah, we have some quick start. We want people to try it out. That's kind of what the talk's about, and we'll go through a little demo, but show of hands, who here has used MindsDB before? Okay, we got some people, but then it's always a quick, easy start. Background, we're an open source platform. We've got now 300 plus integrations, over 25,000 GitHub stars. We raised a lot of money, but we want to start to make it a lot easier to build AI apps. So like Jorge mentioned, Minds are kind of pre-built AI systems that you can configure and just consume. So we've built a bunch of them. We want you to build them, and we're trying to get, a better SDK. We're trying to be more Python native and just make it so you can build a system really quick, because that's kind of what the backbone of this platform is. So sometimes you just gotta ship, This is the key point of our talk and what we want to do here. From all of our talks, all of our clients, all the people we work with, they're all hey, we just want a basic RAG. We want this. We haven't implemented stuff, and we hear all these fancy terms, vector database, knowledge graph, embeddings, re-rank, all this cool stuff, all these tools, and what they really need is just an LLM hooked up to their data. So that's kind of where this knowledge base is under the hood. It's very, very premature, but it's something that we want to make as easy as possible. So talking a bit more about it, key premise, don't worry about all this crazy tech stack. We see all those VC charts of these 50 dev tools. We love them, but at some point, let's just simplify. And in reality, what goes on under the hood, there's a lot about it, right? So fine-tuning, deployment, synthetic data, what are all these benchmarks? How do we do that? What vector DB? What dev tools to use? Should I use RAG, long context? All this stuff is important, and you have to think about it when you make a good AI system. What we're trying to do is just abstract all that away with this concept of a knowledge base where, we think about all this and we do the right default. So all you do is kind of point us to your data, whether that's files, whether that's websites, we have a web crawler, whether that's a database, a CSV, text file, whatever it is, throw it at our knowledge base. We'll handle on the back end all this embedding, chunking, re-ranking, give you sort of answers in a chat completions endpoint. Now, that's kind of what we've been working on the back end, and the glue of this is something that came together 24 hours ago, so it's rough. We'll probably make it better over the weekend, but we have a hackathon. Why not ship it? Why not give ourselves a deadline to do something? So yeah, we've got deployment with the Llama stack and OpenAI, but we love the Llama team. We did the last Llama 3 hackathon on April 20th, right after Llama 3 came out. So part of that, we haven't got all the official glue to glue all this together. So our install is a little rough. Normally it's a very quick, you go to Docker, you search for MindsDB, you click a button, you've got a GUI, and you could, build an app in 10 lines of code. But this stuff isn't out there. So I'll do a little quick walkthrough, but our whole thing is this is the backbone of what a lot of our enterprise users have been using. We're gonna make that decision. Let's open source it, let's build it out, let's get a really good SDK. And it seems impactful for this. We align pretty heavily with the Llama Impact program. A big part of that is we have this big office, we're a small team, we like to use it, we like to host events, we just want more building in the space. So if this makes it easier for people to build, judge us if you want on the sloppy code, but it is what it is, throw LLMs at stuff, and we'll kind of see what it works. But basically, yeah, you don't worry about pre-processing, chunking, embedding models, vector DBs, re-ranking. All that stuff is what's happening under the hood. To consume it, we've got a very, very simple endpoint. Right now, it's just REST endpoints. Our Python SDK coming soon, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But all you really do is you've got one request to create a knowledge base. You give it a name, and you pick an embedding model. If you don't pick, we default it for you. I think that the name is probably just knowledge base. The model is Ada 2. But yeah, so you create a knowledge base, you upload some data. So we support files, PDFs, CSVs, text files, even down to databases. So connected to a database, we'll handle all the parsing, all that stuff. A lot of this stuff is pretty new, but there's just kind of one line of code, and then it's pretty easy to query. You make a request and you pass in a query. So since it's so premature, I don't want to turn this into a long workshop or anything, but we've got some spaghetti code because we have to live code, right? It's a hackathon. So this is my live code of the past few hours. But basically, here's how you would go about doing it. So you go to this create, where is it? Create.py, where we're going to create a knowledge base. So I'm going to call my knowledge base. Expect a Python SDK of one line of code for all this, but point it at our endpoint, give it a name. In this case, it's called demo. And the one thing I'm picking is Ada 2 embeddings. So create a knowledge base. Then when it comes to uploading to that, we've got a pretty extensive web crawler. So I don't know what the typical background of hackers here is, but since this is more so a Llama impact for good, we wanted to promote something that is not the most dev focused, but our web crawler works in a way such that if you find any interesting data and it's on the web, we'll kind of do a very basic crawl, but you can parse all this with an LLM. So all you got to do is basically upload a list of URLs or a URL to our knowledge base. We'll handle scraping it. It's not the best crazy advanced scrape, but if you find a niche where an open source solution could be impactful, whether that's something in government or low resource housing, something like that. A lot of this data is just on the web. It's not in databases, or there's just PDFs and files. So that's kind of why we decided to open source this. Just one line of code to point the URL and we can upload it. Same thing with files. In this case, I uploaded a paper. Just point to the file destination. It's ref.pdf, so it's just a paper. And then the query step is pretty straightforward, So now we've got a knowledge base with two things. It has a web scrape of a website and one PDF. And then if I just run this, query MindsDB. In this case, the web scrape, it's our website. It's our docs, I think. Let me double check. So upload URL. Yeah, I pointed it to docs.mindsdb. We have information in our docs about how the web scraper works. It can click through links. I think it's like clicking through the first 10 links or something. And then I can just run like a little query request, right? So if I want to query our MindsDB docs, I'm in this case just using OpenAI because it's quick for a live demo. And the response we'll get is, I asked it, how do I create a model in MindsDB? I will zoom in so we can read it, but to create a model, first connect MindsDB to your database, create an OpenAI engine, pass it an API key, insert the model with a database, do all this. So, in like 3 lines of code, we just threw a URL and now we've got it hooked up to, in this case, GPT-4o. We have docs to do this with Llama for open source models, so Llama 3.2, Mistral, any models that you want. We've also got other providers, inference providers as sponsors. So Together AI is here. They host some of the fun fine-tunes. I think they host some of the bigger ones, so like the Noose Research, their models might be there. And then Featherless AI, they host, I think, any model on Hugging Face. So Hugging Face, they've listed in their docs some like, Korean Llama fine-tunes, some like government Llama fine-tunes. So anything you find on Hugging Face, they have free inference endpoints for anyone here today. So any pre-fine-tuned models that might fit your use case, it's kind of the same thing. They'll handle all that. And yeah, that's just kind of a really, really rough state of our knowledge base. We'll polish it later, but the two things, so it gives you a response to the source document, and it gives you the documents it referenced. So, if you don't want hallucinations, you can parse through this JSON dump, but it tells you what the source document was. And then in this case, just as an example, I've got different types of stuff in this knowledge base. I'm using it pretty messily. I threw in a research paper and our website docs, which are not relevant, but if this thing was smart, it would do it right, but it looks like my code is broken, so no second demo, live demo. But yeah, that's kind of the rough overview. We've got a quick start download guide. Normally it's like a 2-line, we have a GUI. Right now, since it's raw, we have like you gotta edit some stuff, but we'll be around to support. Our team's here, we're remote. Give us feedback, and yeah, we've got like prizes, so if you, damn, I don't have the slide. If you use us, I think we're giving out a couple $1,000s to people that have fun, impactful stuff that uses knowledge base, but yeah, we're happy to see what people hack on. So thanks for coming. So we've got a little more info here. We've got some prizes, a little, professional slide. we're giving out some money, but realistically, we just want to see what people actually end up building. And, you know, kicking it off, we've got a lot more partners here. It's not just us. So you see all these fancy logos. They're all good friends of ours. We're a big open source platform. We have a panel later today with some more of these open source companies. So you'll hear more about us, but let's talk a little bit more about the logistics, online, in person, what this hackathon's about. So, you know, I'm going to pass it back to Emmanuel.
So thank you, Vibu. Thank you, everybody, for the very nice words. Before I start with the hackathon walkthrough, I want to share a quick thought because, I don't know, I really like hackathons. I mean, you really get to see what people can do. And sure, like the technology is amazing, it's pretty cool, but ultimately this is about you, about what you can do with the technology. You're the ones who get to shape both where the technology goes and how it impacts. So yeah, let's get going on how can you do this during these next 3 days. So first of all, we have 3 main hackathon challenges. You can find some examples if you scan the QR code, which will lead you to the hackathon webpage. But quickly, the 3 challenges are: first, expanding low resources languages. 1 second. The problem statement, you know, many languages lack AI support. And actually, for those who have not had the chance to work with these firsthand, I have had the chance, and it's really like mind-blowing the lack of support that certain languages have. What you assume it's a basic feature or basic functionality, there's literally not support at all with many specific languages. So the challenge is to develop models using Llama to support low-resource languages, ensuring culturally sensitive and locally relevant AI solutions. That's the first one. Then, reducing barriers for Llama developers. The problem statement: developing with Llama can be complex due to data separation and evaluation challenges. So, building tools that streamline Llama's development process, including data preparation, prompt engineering, and evaluation. Second challenge. And lastly, navigating public services. So, government services can be complex and difficult to navigate, creating barriers for citizens. The challenge for you is to use Llama to develop solutions that help users navigate government websites, assist with tax filings, benefit access, or streamline permitting or grant writing processes for agencies. So that's the challenge for you. Now, how can you win this hackathon? There's 4 success criteria that weigh equally during your solution submission, which is first, application of technology, of course, very important. How effectively you apply the technology that you chose or the technologies. Business value, the potential impact and practical value of the solution. Originality, how unique and how creative are you while addressing the challenge. And of course, the presentation, like how clear and effective are you at delivering the project presentation and getting across the idea on how your solution solves it. So now, for what we're here, right? Prices. For the first this is split in 2 tracks. Just a reminder, we have a huge amount of people also participating online. I believe 1,000 plus, I can't recall the number right now. But there's 2 different prize pools for each group of participants. For you that are here on site, first place is competing for $5,000, second place for $3,000, third place for $2,000, and for the people watching us online, first place is $3,000, second place is $1,500, and third place is $500. Let's not forget about the special awards for use of technology from our partners. Best use of Restack is competing for 1,000 cash USD prize. Best use of Llama Index, also 1,000. Best use of Solotech, $500. And best use of MindsDB, as we saw a few minutes ago. First, second, and third place go for 1,000, $750, $500. Best use of Together AI is competing for $2,500 in Together AI credits. Also, the top 2 teams that are planning to continue develop of your project, they will be invited to join an exclusive Meta and LabNext digital incubation program. Edge is offering top 3 winnings teams 1 month free of co-working in downtown San Francisco for each member, from 3 to 5 people. And top winning team will receive 1 year of free Federalist Premium. Now, some benefit from our partners. So right now, participants of this hackathon will get $50 in API credits from Together AI to boost your development and the project. And to access it, you need to sign up through this form. I'm gonna leave it a couple seconds so everybody can take a picture. This is gonna be also live in YouTube. We're streaming on Twitch and other platforms. You can find a QR code outside, so feel free to share that. So a lot of people get to see it as well. Also, participants will receive, well, we will distribute 10 API keys with around 5 concurrent calls available for unlimited use over the weekend. This is perfect for rapid prototyping and real-time project scaling. So tomorrow, you can go find me once you have a team, and first 10 people that come request the API keys, I will happily give them to you. We prepare a collection of tutorials to help you kickstart your development, to help you get ideas, understand how to implement different approaches or different models within the Llama family. We have some pretty cool content, so I definitely recommend you take a look. This is all available in the LabLab platform under tutorials. Here's one more, some article about the evolutions of AI stack. In here is a hackathon guide. It's a section made for you so you know exactly what you have to do during the platform. Just a reminder that everybody who's here who wishes to participate in the hackathon, you need to register in lablab.ai under this event, Llama Impact Hackathon, and create a team. Yes, before we finish this first kickoff, follow our social media, and don't go too far, because in a couple minutes we're gonna start with a super cool panel called Value of Open Source. So yeah, don't move yet, and thank you very much. Welcome everybody, and I wish you happy hacking.
This weekend, and give some additional kind of examples of what we're talking about when we say development for low resource languages, lowering barriers for developers, and for navigating public services. So appreciate y'all's time very much. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick off by handing it over to the two of you and asking you to do some brief intros for us, and then I will give us a little bit more detail on what this means for Llama 3.1 grants.
Great, thanks, Katie. My name is Eric Fernhaber. I work at a tech nonprofit called Digital Green. You probably have not heard of us because we don't actually work in the US, or maybe you have. We work primarily in South Asia and East Africa. And the short of what we do is building an AI coach for smallholder farmers in those countries. So for those of you who are not farmers, which is also myself, farmers rely heavily, of course, on soil, on seeds, and really information is their biggest need there. And so if you're a farmer trying to think about what's the best time of year to plant my crop, when do I irrigate it, when do I add water, when do I fertilize, when do I weed, when do I deal with pests, those are all critical steps that you have to get them all right in the order so you get your crop to market and make money off of it. So for us, getting that information into the hands of farmers is essential, and getting the right information at the right time so they're making the right decisions. And so our AI coach does exactly that. It's an app in their pocket. They can ask questions, take an image of their crop saying, hey, there's these weird bugs I've never seen before. What do I do about it? And it gives them back an answer with some possible solutions they can try out. So yeah, that's the short of what we do. Like I said, we're in South Asia, East Africa, and building AI for good in that sense.
Thanks, Rick. So my name is Varun. I'm an AI partner engineer at Meta, and I lead our AI developers team. So I've been at Meta for some time now, and building different developer platforms for various different products. So now what my team is responsible for is like increasing adoption of Llama. So how do we reduce the friction for the developers who are looking to use Llama is what my team is currently focused on. And I am super excited to be here and listen through all your pain points and hear more about how I can reduce that friction for you today and after the hackathon too. We are hiring, selfishly speaking, so if there's anybody looking out for it, please reach out to us. It's an exciting role, so looking forward to hearing more and all the projects that you have in your mind in the coming days. I also have my team here. Hamid is here, and also Sayam, so please stop by and say hello.
Appreciate it. So I wanted to just start by giving everybody a little bit of an overview of how we came to be here today before we dive into our panel. So I am on Meta's policy team. I do product strategy on our policy team. And one of the things that our team is looking to do is figure out what is the true societal value that AI can bring, and how do we showcase that to policymakers? One of the ways that we're trying to figure out how to do that is through an annual flyout, where we bring policy stakeholders or folks who are really involved in policy from all over the world together for a handful of days to talk about what is emerging technology, what does it look like, and how can we build it responsibly and do good things for the world with it. And so we were very lucky to have Eric with us at this event as well. We talked a lot about open source. And we had a discussion with this group of about 60 different policy stakeholders from all over the world, and we asked them, what are the biggest challenges that you are facing in your communities? And this group is civil society, it's nonprofit, it's academics, it is some policy makers, and we really wanted to understand, what kinds of things are you up against, and do you think there's a role for open source AI to contribute to the solutions to your problems? And over the course of our discussion, that group aligned that two of the biggest things that they are really struggling with, that they think AI can help with, is navigating government services and providing greater access to low resource languages. And I think these two things in particular have been really interesting to me because it's sort of the idea of those two led to the idea of the third as well, where if we're going to solve those two problems, we need way more people developing. And to do that, we've got to make it easier to use this technology. And so I'm super excited to have this group focused on these things tonight. We also, in the last couple of weeks, have spent a lot of time talking with regulators in the state of California in particular, especially those who are involved in things like disaster relief or in providing kind of critical government systems to constituents in times of emergency or of stress. And very interestingly, and completely unrelated to the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago, the two things that they also said they really need help with are translation of under-resourced languages and the delivery and navigation of public resources. So I think that says a lot about what we're trying to do here this weekend, that there is this theme all over the world that folks know that this tool exists and can do so many things, but what it does right now is largely in English and for things that are not necessarily connecting people to very, very basic services. And so I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, and that's really what we're trying to do with the Llama Impact program as a whole as well, is we're trying to figure out how can we bring resources, so funding, mentorship, things like that, to organizations, to developers, to individuals who are building really transformative technology. So with that, I want to dive in to a couple of questions that I have specifically for both of you along those themes. And Varun, I'm going to start with you, because you've done so much work with developers, with your team, to begin to lower the barriers to entry for Llama developers. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you guys are going about that and what you have seen so far to be the value of doing that kind of work.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, if you ask yourself this question about what platforms or what operating system do you use today to build all your hacks, I would say most of you would say Linux, right? That's where you all start. And why? Why it became popular? It's open source, it was made available to everyone, and it's free to use. So that's where we want Llama to also be. Llama is the open source for AI, is what we all aspire to be at Meta. And adoption of these models gets challenging, because if you think about OpenAI or any closed models, all they give you is a simple API that you make a call and you run your application, right? There's a lot of things that happens behind the scenes, like the deployment, the safety, the performance of the model, the throughput optimizations, all of the things, this is the magic that's happening behind the scenes. Now, if you take an open model, like Llama or any other model, all that responsibility is in the hands of the developer. But at the same time, you have a lot of advantages of having to use your open source model, because the data is in your hands, you're not giving away your precious data to anyone, you get to control your narrative, you get to customize these models, and that's why open source and open implementation of these models is quite powerful, but at the same time challenging. So this is where my team comes into play, and this is what we keep on thinking, having built multiple developer platforms at Meta, is how do we lower the adoption barrier for the developers? And how can we keep it as simple as possible so that we get to at the same level and the performance as the closed models? So this is where we are thinking about building Llama Stack, which I think you will be hearing more about it tomorrow, which is our solution to kind of simplify the deployment of open source models, and improving the process of how we make it easier to get started with simple get started guides, like how-to guides. So this is what my team focuses on. And we build all end-to-end solutions with recipes as well, where we have a repo called as Llama Recipes on GitHub, which has end-to-end solutions of various different use cases that are very specific to certain verticals. So what I would encourage everyone between now and tomorrow is to kind of also look at these spaces, which will help you have ideas to implement during your hack. And most likely, some of these solutions are already there. And that is how we are encouraging people and making it easier to lower the adoption of open models from the Meta on my team.
Thank you so much. And so, Eric, one of the things that I'm really excited about, and that I touched on a second ago as well, is the easier it gets to build with Llama, hopefully the more people we have using it and solving some of those local challenges that we've been talking about. From your perspective and from the work that you all are doing in largely non-English speaking areas, what do you think are some of the challenges that are present, and what would it mean to expand access to Llama and to low resource languages in particular?
Yes, as I mentioned, working in the countries that we do, 0 of our 200,000 users speak English as their first language. It's maybe their second language, maybe their third, maybe it's not a language that they speak at all. So the way that we think about it, obviously I said localization is critical for agriculture, and language is also critical. Certain vocabulary is very specific to agriculture, and you want to get that vocabulary right in terms of whether it's a type of pesticide you're using, specific timings for applications of water, things like that. All that matters very much. And then even at the level of farmers in those languages, they get kind of colloquial about some of the words they use as well. They'll say like sack, and everybody knows that, oh, a sack is like roughly 3 pounds. But if you don't know that, you could get it wrong, which is critical for these farmers that are farming food for their families and for sale. So we see kind of 2 big challenges as far as what the lack of availability of these languages or low resource languages provide. One is tech related, and one is very human related. So I started to touch on the human point for just a second there. It's very much about resources, language, and specific vocabulary even for the farmers that we work with. So if they have to operate in a different language, they're translating in their head. It kind of limits the ability for it to be impactful, or they just outright don't trust it, don't use it, and don't get the benefit from it, which for us, of course, is the worst possible outcome there. On the tech side of things, which I'm sure will appeal more to a lot more kind of the developers here. Caveat, I'm not a developer. I'm more on the partnership side of things. So for us, though, from a tech standpoint, it makes our stack more complicated, which of course raises costs, raises latency, raises lag times, things like that. And just to give you an example of how we build our tech stack, it's very modular in terms of where those localities are, just based on where the content's coming from, where that information sits in a database, how fast the processing time happens, what language we need to use. So in India versus Kenya versus Ethiopia, it's a slightly different tech stack based on those locales. So in India, for example, the government of India has a huge database for the hundreds, if not thousands, of languages across India. So we slot that in for our translation services there. Whereas in Kenya, Ethiopia, and then in Nigeria as well, there's no nationwide database. There's no UNESCO or multilateral type database of language. So honestly, we use Google Translate. And so what happens for most of our tech stack is a query comes in whatever language. The very first step that happens is that query is translated into English. All the processing happens in English, all the work happens, and the very, very last step is to translate it back into whichever language. So again, adding latency, adding processing time, adding API calls, adding more connections, complexity to that tech stack. And then, of course, using some of those tools, you don't always get it right. Google Translate is pretty good, but for House of Pigeon in rural Nigeria, it's not good whatsoever. So content and more support for low resource languages will make all of that easier on the tech side. And then more importantly, of course, going back on the human side, it'll continue to build that trust, that usability, more engaged users, and more benefit from the impact of what we're doing.
Thank you so much. I think you touched on something really interesting there too, that in addition to sort of the technical benefits that come from developing in these languages, that cultural element is so important. I think Llama right now is available in 8 languages, which is great, but one of those languages is Spanish. And I'm sure as many Spanish speakers in the room know, the difference between Spanish in Spain and Spanish in Mexico and Spanish in Chile are very, very different. And the kinds of words that we use in each of those are really different and really important. And so I think some of the work that's going on already to do these translations, even for languages that are supported by Llama, for a cultural context has been super exciting. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to tell this group a bit more about what we're talking about when we say navigating public services as well, just to give some examples in the same way that you all have very helpfully given examples of the other 2 topics. And I really encourage you to look at the QR code that showed those on the website as well. But we had some partners in policy positions give us a couple of hands-on examples to share with you guys. The first one I thought was fascinating. The first example, they said navigating public services means translation, and that's particularly true for cultural dialect and things like ASL that right now are not largely supported by AI models. Other things that they talked about that I think are widely applicable, even outside of government, are things like reporting after an event for record-keeping purposes. Just having something that, especially now that we've got multimodality of these models, being able to speak and have it translate into a text and put that into certain forms is really useful. Things like anomaly detection for weather purposes, especially to detect if we might be headed towards disaster prevention or disaster events, and learning how we can use that information for prevention. There are groups doing this for wildfires in California in particular that are really fascinating, and I think there's a lot of interest in figuring out what other things might we be able to detect and prevent ahead of time. Also, one of the things that I actually loved this because at the last event that I was here for in September, somebody came and asked me if this exact thing would count as impact, and I said absolutely yes. But chatbots to direct people to public resources. Being able to just say, where do I report a noise complaint in the city of San Francisco, and getting an actual phone number is hugely helpful, because many, many resources exist for people and we do not know it or know how to navigate a government website to find it. And then lastly, something that we heard a lot was helping people with tax support. What does it mean to file your taxes in the United States of America? Can't begin to tell you, but getting help with that was something we heard a lot from a variety of different, both governments and citizens who are looking for support navigating public services. So wanted to just sort of provide a little bit of that background as well. One of the things I'm really curious though is you all both work very closely with some of the communities that I think will impact from the outcomes of this hackathon. And I'm curious if you guys have seen any sort of lessons learned in development or any pitfalls to avoid in development or things that you have advice-wise for the folks in this room as we head into the weekend.
I think, Katie, the first thing is you gave away so many ideas in terms of the things that you can do with the public data. I would definitely start there. Defining that problem statement and how are you going to differentiate yourself. I think that's the first biggest thing that you must be solving for before you start implementing any of your project, right? So that is like one area where it's usually, oh, I'm going to do RAG, I'm going to pick this example, I'm going to start using this data. A lot of people will be doing the same thing, right? So think about like what is it that you're going to differentiate yourself and what is the value that you're going to be bringing in that is going to stand out. Like that's the first thing that's top of my mind. The second thing is in all of this, when we talk about AI, safety should be your first thought. Safety should not be an afterthought. Because when you're deploying these automated systems or things that are going to make everyone's life easier, there is still a very high probability that things can go wrong. So think about safety as to how you're going to be implementing them, how are you going to be handling the edge cases, and what are the potential challenges that you might be coming across when it is deployed in production environments, right? So think about safety as one of the key components when you're building these solutions. And the last part I would say is data. When you look at the data for the first time, there will be a lot of noise, and you might not need all the data that you think to make your models smarter necessarily. So if you're thinking about fine-tuning, or if you're thinking about building these models specific to certain languages, data is not going to be everything. So high quality data is what is going to make your models also smarter and better performant. So evaluate your data sets, closely look at what and how it's going to be adding value or how it is going to help you or models. And on Llama recipes that I was like referring previously, we have recipes that help you fine tune for specific languages. So that would be a great start for you to also look into because you don't have to solve many of the problems that we have already solved for you. So look into those existing samples and we will be there tomorrow. We'll have a bunch of mentors from Meta as well. Thanks for them to volunteering for their weekend and their time. So reach out to us and we are more than happy to help you figure out how to make it easier for you to hack on this project.
Yeah, I think two come to mind for me, but I think before that, plus one to safety, especially for us, working with smallholder farmers in the rural parts of these countries. Otherwise, maybe not connected to services, not connected to the internet, don't have anyone to advocate for them, varying levels of formal education, digital literacy, kind of very vulnerable populations and can be easily taken advantage of. So designing for safety first is critical in this case. I think the first one that came to mind, which was probably pretty obvious to everybody here, but build an open, really lean into the open source mentality. We do that a lot. We publish almost everything that we have on GitHub, on Hugging Face, and it does two things for us. One, it allows us to build transparently so people can call us out. It lends us to that safety aspect as well. We don't get to hide behind closed boxes. Everything is out there for everybody to see. And so it helps with the collaboration with other partners as well. They can see things that we didn't see, help us build from there. And then vice versa, is contributing back to the community. So we give our code to other folks and they can build on that. So they don't have to start from scratch and going from there. The kind of the second one, really for us as well, is designing for inclusivity. Again, going back to the smallholder farmers, thinking about folks in rural areas, but very different conditions for us at least. Designing for their situation actually has brought us some really creative engineering and product problem solving. My favorite one is we've been trying to figure out low connectivity or low mobile phone penetration rates in some of these areas. And we're like, okay, some of these big LLMs rely on distant databases, large processing data centers, so you have to have constant connectivity. How do we design for offline? Because a lot of these farmers are in that situation. We hadn't come up with a good solution of that. We were like, oh, do we build small language models? Do we wait until the tech catches up to that? And we were talking to one of the farmers in Kenya about a month ago, and they showed us rows and rows of photos where basically they were having a conversation with the farmer, had a bunch of questions, literally just wrote the questions down in their notes app, went back to their office, threw all the questions into our app, got all the answers back. They took screenshots of the answers, then they went back to the farmer the next day with the answers. And we're like, oh, well, that's how you solve for offline there. So we're now starting to build in a feature where they can basically queue those questions in offline mode in app, and then when they get connectivity, it reconnects and runs it for them without having to do that manual process of asking, waiting, screenshots. So it's that kind of inclusivity design that can really, what I think, kind of bring out some creativity in that aspect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really, really cool. Well, I'm looking at the time. We actually have time for a couple of questions before we wrap this panel. One thing I do have in my notes that I forgot to say earlier and want to say now, this is our Llama 3.1 Impact Grant Program. Please use Llama 3.2. There are great new features in Llama 3.2, and the announcement of the grants predate the announcement of Llama 3.2, but it is not excluded from this program. So, and with that, I think, can I look to you for mic running for any questions that we might have? Perfect. Use this one.
Hi, my question is to Mr. Varun. You mentioned about the recipes for Llama 3, which you can use to fine-tune the model for low-resource languages. My question is where we can find this recipe.
Wait, I think is it this one? Or this one? Oh. Might have to lean, sorry.
That's okay. So if you go to GitHub, that's okay. I'll try to hold it. Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. So if you go to GitHub and just search for Llama recipes, you should be able to find that repo. And there are like, in the recipes folder, you can find the specific recipe or a notebook, a Jupyter notebook that gives you access to the data and everything. Hamid on my team can also help. Yeah, so for folks who are online, what my colleague basically mentioned is inside the multilingual folder of Llama recipes GitHub repo is where you can find how to fine-tune with other languages. And you can always reach out to us over Discord channel. So we will get on there tonight. We are not there yet. We'll get on it. So you can reach out for folks who are here
we will be here, and you can always come to us and ask any questions you might have if you're working on fine-tuning with other languages.
Sorry, I'm not used to using a mic. Are we allowed to have hybrid teams, teams where some of the people are in person and some of the people are virtual?
Yes, so not exactly, because you either need to participate on-site or online, but after the sessions we can sit down and figure out exactly what your situation is.
Hi, I wanted to know, you mentioned in your talk that safety is a #1 concern that you think about on a daily basis. And I think a lot of us know the safety features that we use, like in cars, seatbelts, for example. I wanted to know what sort of safety features are built into the LLMs that we use, and is there any work being done on the LLM side as opposed to the developer side?
I can take that. So when we think about safety, there are like two parts. One is the system level safety, which is built into the foundational model, right? And then we think about the other safety, which is like built at the system level. So one is the foundation level, the other one is the system level. When you try to make your model to be safe for everything that's out there, then it is not usable. So think about an example of a gaming chatbot versus a healthcare chatbot. So things that you can share in a gaming chatbot is not the same that's going to be on the healthcare chatbot, right? What is safe on one is not safe on the other side. So when we think about safety, it is the foundational model. It always tries to make the best effort to make it as safe as possible. But then that's why Meta always recommends you to use other safety layers on top of your foundational models. So that's why we have this entire set of other models as a part of the purple Llama umbrella, and we also call it trust and safety models, where we have Llama Guard, Prompt Guard, Code Shield. There are so many other content moderation models that you put on top of your foundational models and customize that based on your application. If there are things that you don't need, and if there are things that you want more, that is the layer. The system level layer is where you customize your safetiness for your application. So though you have the safety on the foundation, you want to use your safety models on top of it. And that is what all the closed models also do, which is agnostic to you. But when you're using open source models, that's why I recommend you always want to think about it.
Okay, with that, we will say a huge thank you to Eric and to Varun for your time. We really appreciate it. Huge thank you to all of you for the things that you were getting ready to build this weekend. And if you have any more questions about Llama Impact Grant Program on your GAL, anything about low resource languages, or about Digital Green, come talk to Eric. And anything about Llama Stack or Llama holistically, please come talk to Varun. Thank you so much.
We still have a couple more talks. First of all, thank you, Kate, Eric, and Varun. Right now, we are going to give a warm welcome to Philip Brulé, who's going to give us a small talk about Quick Start with Restack, Together AI, Llama, and Llama Index. So please, everybody, give a round of applause for Philip.
CTO and co-founder of Restack. Restack is an open source framework for autonomous intelligence. It allows developers today in production to run millions of AI workflows every day. And a couple of weeks ago, I moved in San Francisco, and we want to make it accessible for hackers. I am personally been doing hackathon for the last like 15 years. If I would not be sponsoring this one, I would participate. And so I know very well what's the position of developers that are in the room today, which is how do I win the $22,000 of prizes? How do I get started? And usually the problems when you go to hackathons is you spend the first couple of hours figuring out how to hook up with all the sponsors' technologies. So what I did for you, if you go to restack.io and you go to the hackathon page, I made a quick start. I also have a video available for you to follow, which is using Restack as the orchestration layer for your AI workflows, and to give AI to talk to Llama API, Llama index, to do things. I don't want to show you how it works. So, it's super easy to get started. We are available in TypeScript and in Python, and I'll show you how to get started with Python. If you go to the example, and the link in the website will will move you to Llama Quick Start. In the README, you will, because we're open source, you just spin up the Restack engine with Docker. I have it running here, as you see. You'll get a UI where you get all your AI workflows running. So, and so if you're a Python developer, what you really like is this. So you just write functions like the way you would write any functions in Python. For example, here I have a function that is crawling a website. So for example, if you need to go to a government website over the weekend, you can just write in Python. And we don't have any abstraction. You write the way you want. The only thing you need to do is to add a decorator as function definition. Another function I wrote today for you is, for example, to go to Hacker News and search things. Again, a Python function and with a function decorator. And a small function in Python where you would use the Llama 3.2 model hosted by Together. And because Llama index is also a sponsor, we use Llama index to call through Together API Llama. And like all the functions on Restack, you just write them in pure Python. There is no abstraction. Just write code. You just add the decorator here. So why this decorator is important? Because afterwards, what I can do is I can make a workflow. And a workflow is multiple steps. So I would do step 1, go search Hacker News. Step 2, for all the results, go to their website of projects on Hacker News, crawl it, and then call for each of these websites Llama to make a summary, and then out of all these summaries to call again Llama to make me a summary of all the websites I've seen. And it's super easy then to start. You would do, for example, for you, I just made you run the services, you run your backend, which would be, for example, in that case, a fast API, or you would do a Flask or whatever, with an endpoint to schedule that workflow. And then I made a small streamlit to get you started super easy. And I get this thing. Out of the box, I can search Hacker News for the keyword AI, and I click search. And then in the Restack UI, you get your workflow. You see the function that goes to Hacker News, that took 300 milliseconds, went to a website, crawled the website, then from all the results of the website, went to Llama, get a summary, and as you see, this is running on my machine. This is a local host, right? So I can replay the workflows. I can see all the time that it took. And then you bring it back to the front end and you show, for example, the summary of every project of Hacker News that I just searched. And the magic about Restack is that I didn't have to deal with what if it doesn't crawl the website properly? What is retrying? All the retrying are automatically done. What if the Together AI has a rate limit? No problem. The way it works with Restack is your services here. You just put rate limit 1, which is maximum 1 per second, max concurrent function run 1, so it doesn't do 2 concurrent calls, and then all is queued up, and it will retry. It's super reliable, it's super easy. So for the hackathon, you get super quickly, you write in Python a few functions, you make workflows, you can do step. And then later on, if you're really interested in going to production, this scales to millions of workflows without any problem. And the reason is because in the background, we use temporal for the orchestration and Kubernetes for everything that is deployment. But already, for the hackathon, you get started in a few minutes. You get everything in the UI. You code like you want in TypeScript or Python. There is no abstraction. And yeah, with this, you win a couple of hours of having to hook up things, and you can get started and have products that really have a differentiation. Now, for people that want to go beyond, the reason why we are building this is that from all the execution of the workflows, you get the data set to be able to fine-tune models, to be able to increase the accuracy of every execution. I don't know if many of you will go that far during the weekend, but if you want to talk about reinforcement learning with execution feedback, fine-tuning model out of all this workflow orchestration, I'm happy to help. And then if you need to just get started, you go to restack.io. I'll put the link on Discord too. We have a hackathon. We can help you win these prizes. There's 22K of cash prizes. We also put an extra 1,000 if you use Restack. There's many different examples of, like, if you want to start with Express or Next or Fast or Flask or all of these things. You can, it's super easy also for you to do. If you want to spin up Llama locally or LM Studio, no problem. You'll just call your local endpoint. Together AI is offering credits, so this is also something you can do. They have 60 requests per minute rate limit, so I do advise to use at least like 1 per second so that you don't run into 4 to 9 all the time. I know also that Gemini is offering Llama for free, so if you sign up to Gemini, you get Llama that could be helpful to scale inference there. Yeah, so just wanted to help you get started. If you have any questions, just pick me up. Have a nice weekend.
Well, Thank you, Philip. I mean, I think that's the best developer support you can get. You're talking directly with the CTO, CEO, founders of all the technologies that you're using. So right now, I would like to welcome to the stage founder of Edge Foundation, Era Chian. So please, everybody, a round of applause.
Good. Is that neat?
Just fine.
You need
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Era. Excited to be here today. I want to talk a little bit about this emergence of open source economy and entrepreneurship. So quick background, what is Edge? Edge is a research foundation. We focus a lot on edge intelligence and open source tech advancement. And I started this journey about like 2.5 years ago with my founder, Ilya Poloskin, who's actually one of the co-authors for the Transformer paper, Attention is All You Need. And as you probably has experienced, Transformer was one of the early open source projects, experienced over 7 years acceleration. And today we're here trying to create an ecosystem for founders to accelerate this journey. And so to share a bit of core thesis for us, we think open source entrepreneurship is very different. You know, in San Francisco, like startup is accelerated, but very few people taught you how to become an open source founder. It's hard. Right? You're not only just create a product or business, you're literally start a campaign, like a warrior like yourself to do this journey. And we find that we're actually at the tipping point. Actually, according to one of the Harvard research, like the open source market is now close to 8 trillion right now. And the most interesting part is we start to see the emergence of like open source economy. Take the Llama 3.2 like drop for example. It drops activate a whole economy activate from inference provider all the way to observability tool. And actually, over a year ago, we also start to see multiplayer products start to emerge. MindsDB, OpenBB, and the Llama Index with a couple partners ship amazing like new fintech AI stack across the open source collaboration. So in short, we start to see a very different like a market structure, economic business model unleashed right now. And that's the future we start to see at the tipping point. Also, as a founder, what does that mean to you? You know, open source is not just like one open source contribution. There are potential founder journey down the road as well. You know, thanks to the whole entire like indie hacker, AI engineer, creator economy uprise, you have crazy founder like Levels.io become a millionaire, like just be a single founder. And at the same time, look at like MindsDB, News Research, a lot of amazing open source company start from a GitHub project now all the way to like a 50 million, crazy, a lot of like unicorns are emerging itself. So as the open source founder, there are opportunities down the road. And we have put together this trio of thoughts for you is to show you the different possible outcomes today as the open source founder. You have different possibilities down there. However, there's still lack of structured support to the grassroots open source founder. If you're not at one of the powerhouse, you know, don't get those like crazy like GPU support. What does that mean to you? How to get your support? And we see there's a missing gap here. That's why we decided to launch an open source campus, really dedicated to focus a lot of innovation hub for the open source founder. And it's really amazing to see folks like the Llama Impact Grant Program. We're supporting a lot of founders in this journey as well. And we hope to provide you a more than a training ground, all the way from the structured programming towards your different skill sets, to different grant and funding support, as well to specialized skill to meet your peer fellow as well. So over the last about like 8 to 10 months, we soft launched the campus already and host over like 30 events across 4 cities with 5,000 attendees here. And now we're calling for your help. We're launching our first open source residency in January next year. Whether you're running a salaried program, have a grant program, or just need a like open space for in-person hacking, we'd love to be in touch and talk with you. So in short, open source founders, you're a warrior, and I hope you guys are ready for tomorrow's hackathon. Look forward to your amazing project there. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we're going to have the last panel right now, so stay tuned. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage, and please give a big round of applause for our panelists, Maureen Baker, Nikki Birkner, Julianne Ferrero, and Lori Voss. Is everybody here? And also, Vibu, please come join us on stage to moderate. We need one more chair.
Mike.
We're going to be discussing open source AI as a building block. So we're going to have a brief session and then a Q&A. And as a reminder, tomorrow we start 10 a.m. We have breakfast for everybody, and then a full day of hacking, high on good protein. Okay.
You guys want to pass this one? Awesome. So thanks again. One of our last sessions here, we have a lot of great companies involved. So instead of back-to-back 15-minute company pitches, we figured let's take it to a panel. Everyone here is really bright. They work at really great places. They've done a lot for the industry and open source in general. So let's pick their brains. I have interesting questions, but I want to keep it to 60-40. I'll ask some questions, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. Kind of our last big section. But before we kick off, can we get like a one-liner? What's your name? Where do you work? What do you guys do in open source? Just quick intros. We'll pass around. So let's start off.
Hi, I'm Marianne Becker, and then I'm a managing partner at Founders Bay. We're a venture studio for AI startup. I'm also helping, I'm head of growth at a company called the Agentic, and we use open source models to build the most accurate LLMs for AI agents.
Hi, everybody. My name's Laurie. I am head of developer relations at Llama Index. We are a framework for building generative AI applications.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki. I'm a product manager at Together AI, and we are an AI acceleration cloud that offers inference, fine-tuning, GPU clusters. So we're there for all your compute needs.
And I'm Julian Ferrero. I work at Snowflake. We provide open source, both integrations and contributions at every layer of the stack. So contributions to Apache Iceberg for data. We acquired Modin, so Python execution. We acquired Streamlit, so the front end to your applications. And then TrueLens, your new monitoring stack. So, and we also have an open source embedding model that has hundreds of thousands of downloads. So we have open source that we also commercialize via platform we sell to enterprises.
Awesome. Well, as we know, great list of speakers. I'm going to kick off straight into it. The very obvious question. Thoughts on open source models versus the big proprietary? There's some obvious stuff, you know, like you don't want to send your data to a big company, you can host an open source model. There's also some obvious challenges. You got to host an open source model, like Llama 405B, we love it. It's pretty big though. You need some GPUs. So any insights that we've learned outside of the obvious, right? So if anyone wants to dig in, tackle the question, let's just kick the first one out. Any exciting models, insights about deploying them, learning them, stuff that we don't see on the surface level.
So one of the things we see is that most of the large intelligence only exists in services you host outside. And so how do you make it easier to host 405B? So our research team developed a library to deploy 405B in a more efficient way. Kind of like the Snowflake way to do things is like, how do you do things at scale? And so we solve the problems of like, how do you do things at scale with open source? So that's kind of some of the things that we're thinking about. So our research team spends a lot of time on that. So that's kind of one of the things, like how do we bring very large intelligence? And of course, how do you bring also very small intelligence via fine tuning and all that kind of stuff, all the stuff that everyone already knows. So.
I think that one of the coolest things about open source is that it really levels the playing field for anyone who wants to build. What we've seen together is a lot of companies, startups, developers coming in with very narrow, unique use cases and very specific data sets that they've either sourced from the internet or created themselves with their own, companies or customers, and then they end up training models that end up being their own. And one of the coolest things about fine-tuning an open source model, well, depends on the platform, but at least together, is that there's no lock-in. You can host it with us and we'll provide all the GPUs, but you can also take it with you anywhere you want to go. We allow you to download your weights and go host it yourself or host it elsewhere. So I think that's the true power of open source, is being able to create very specific, narrow models that are more cost efficient and that are more accurate for your unique use cases. And also knowing that that's your own personal IP.
Okay, I think if we dig a little deeper, so outside of the model space, like you mentioned, Snowflake is doing some pretty interesting research on actually consuming this technology. Some of the state-of-the-art work, like I think LoRa came out of a research lab and it's open source. It's something that's not from a big proprietary company. There is impactful stuff that comes into open source. As you guys work as these companies, how do you make that decision of what to work on, what to open source, what to keep proprietary? How do you kind of think about these discussions? Kicking it off, Llama Index is primarily an open source framework. So any thoughts, insights to share about that?
Sure. Yeah, so we are a framework that tries to connect every data source to every vector store to every LLM. And the value of being open source there is that we don't know what all of those are going to be. Every day a new company walks in the door and is like, we've got the best vector store ever. And we're like, okay, submit a PR. We can, like all of the great open source projects before us, we can grow through the power of the community far, far, far beyond the power of our small team.
So I think open source provides a couple of benefits. First, it's great marketing, right? Because then you get in front of all the developers. Two, it's great to give back to the community. When I was head of engineering at a company called If we wanted to give back and we wanted to open source. At that point, we had 100 million users. I think what we found is that if you are building, let's say, an internal tool, like a dev tooling, and that it can be isolated from something else, then that's a great way to open source it, because you're not giving out your IP and then you're contributing to the community there. So what we were able to open source at that point was kind of a GraphQL alternative. And also the advantage of open source is that you get all the amazing developers making it better and making it more robust. So I'm always recommending to all the companies I'm at, just find something that you can isolate that is kind of a dev tooling, and then you can give back to the community.
I guess to add on top of that, I think that together we obviously like a lot of people question like the commercial viability of open source. It is really hard to have your entire business model based on an open source, and I think what many companies do is try to leverage a bit of both. Like there are certain parts you were saying that you can keep closed source, like for example at Together we have an inference stack that helps you run models faster that we created, that it's proprietary, and we keep that closed source. But in terms of like our models and inventions, like when we release new innovations like mixture of agents that allows you to call multiple proposers of LLMs and then aggregate them into one response beating GPT 4.0 accuracy. Those kinds of like innovations we like to open source because we think that they can really push innovation forward if more people are contributing to them. So I think a combination of both is also important and helps companies be able to, you know, make some money so that they can continue fostering that innovation.
Yeah, if anyone wants to double click, how do people go about productizing open source? How do we go about making money off of an open source project? Some things as an example for us at MindsDB, a common concern that we see is, you know, you're a little startup, what if you go away and you don't exist? Why would we build on you? Your team could disappear. But being built on open source, like companies still have that, you know, even if as a company we dissolve, the core tech is still there and they can still prove it. But I'm curious if anyone else has any other thoughts on, you know, we've got a pretty interesting crowd here about an impactful Llama hackathon, and we want to see a lot of the work being built on open source and staying open source. So any tips on if these projects go further along, become companies, startups, how do you monetize open source? What do we not see?
So, you know, in a past life, very long ago, one of my roles was a co-founder of NPM Inc. So I have a lot of thoughts about how to unsuccessfully monetize open source. There are a few fundamental models. There's the services model, which where you say, you know, we have this open source, we will build it for you. If you pay us money to build that for you. That is a successful, if not venture successful model. It tends not to get the sort of 10x, 100x returns that VC goes for. There's the open core model where people say, okay, you can build something valuable on the open source, but if you want to, if you want all the bells and whistles, you have to pay extra. And then there is the model that we picked at Llama Index, which is essentially the convenience model. Everything that we provide in our enterprise service, which is called Llama Cloud, you could build in the open source if you wanted to, but we are the best people at building Llama Index in the world because we invented it. So we are the best at building it, the best at scaling it, the best at making sure that it's reliable, and we provide you with this service that works very well. So you have the reassurance that it's open source, so if you needed to build it yourself, you could, but you don't have to if you're an enterprise, which if you're a non-tech enterprise, like think a big bank, an insurance company, something like that, they've got relatively small tech teams. They don't want to build everything from scratch, but they have a ton of data, so they have AI problems. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, I think it's super helpful. I think that's what a lot of the people here to learn, right? At the face level, when a large company like Meta decides to put out open source, open weights, it's one thing. But as a smaller startup, there's a lot more that goes into that, thought process of should we open source something and how do we make money? So it's great to hear it firsthand. You want to add more?
Yeah, so one of the easiest way I would say is just to, let's say you're building an open source software, to just have it hosted yourself and then charge a SaaS fee, and that usually works very well. So you can look at WordPress. WordPress is open source, but then for the hosted version, you can charge a fee that way. But these are all great points.
Awesome. To kind of change the topic a little bit, one thing that we really value in open source is sort of this community aspect. So that's both the digital and the in-person. We've got an in-person community here in SF, our hackathons, but also there are some benefits to having a community around your open source project. Does anyone have any stories, thoughts, any examples they want to share about another reason for why we might want to open source, how the community can help out.
Yeah, so a perfect example was when we decided to acquire Streamlit. I don't know if anybody here has used Streamlit as a way to build some front ends and stuff like that. And a big question we had was, what do we do with it? Do we kill it and it just becomes Snowflake? Do we leave it as its own thing and let it run? And truly what helped make the decision of like, let's leave it alone and let's let it run was the fact that the community was growing. And what we wanted to do was use the Snowflake marketing muscle to make that community grow faster. And so that's kind of what we do. So we love seeing Streamlit apps getting developed, whether it's on your computer or on the community cloud. And that was the decision that we made. And we're very happy about that decision. Same thing happened when we acquired TrueLens, or the TrueEra company that developed TrueLens. And so there's kind of that decision of like, what happens when you acquire something that has a lot of like community value, and you kind of have to make a decision. There was another one that we acquired and we said it doesn't have a community play, so we said let's just integrate it, turn it into a product. So that decision happens every time we look at what's happening in the market, how do we use it, how do we make it part of the platform.
There's also and like an interesting thing about open source is that you get to see a lot of talent of people contributing to your open source projects. We've definitely hired quite a few people who have contributed to open source projects that we put out there where we are like, wow, you actually figured out a better way to do this. Do you want to come work with us? So I think that's also a great way of engaging the community and finding like pure raw talent that's, you wouldn't find otherwise.
Awesome. One final question before we kick it back off to the audience. Where do we see the stack between open source models and proprietary models? Let's say a year down, 5 years down. Any predictions of what will be primarily used where? Just, hot take, fun question.
That's a good one. So I would say we will see more and more of open source projects because, again, now what drives really startup growth is your ability to distribute your product. And I really believe that the way to do that is one through either social media and community. And open source builds communities. And open source is a great way for you to get in front of developers. So we're going to start seeing more and more developer tools being open source, and that's my prediction for 2025.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say open source will win.
I like it.
The lesson of operating systems is that the open source foundation won, right? Like Linux is everywhere, Linux is in Windows, and it commoditized operating systems, and I think unless the open source models manage to achieve exponential growth, in which case, the closed source models manage to achieve exponential growth, in which case they'll achieve AGI and it won't matter. They'll probably plateau, and that means that open source will catch up, and that means open source will win.
I agree. I think open source will win too. The trend that I've seen is that initially when the enterprises were trying to adopt the technology, the AI technology, they went originally with closed source models just because they were more advanced and they were the fad. But as these companies grow, they start realizing that closed source becomes very cost prohibitive, and that open source is very quickly catching up. So we're starting to see a trend of these enterprises just moving to open source. There's obviously the factor that with open source, like you need a little bit more of a technical team to understand it, but it becomes like a pretty great advantage in terms of data privacy, in terms of costs, in terms of no vendor lock-in, as you were saying, and like making sure that whatever you're building is gonna stay there, no matter if one company ends up disappearing. So my prediction is that every large enterprise that is not already running their AI use cases in open source will be in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think no hot take, but open source will be 80% of what we need to do. Commercial will be 20% of what we need to do. And it'll be a balance over time of how that shakes. I think it started 100% commercial. We're probably like at 50-50 right now. I think we're gonna get to an 80-20 where like, there's problems that I don't wanna solve and I just want a vendor to do it for me. most of the problems that I have, open source can do, and it'll give you more control. And so we'll see kind of that balance shift over time. So that's my take.
Awesome. Well, let's open it up to Q&A from the audience. We have some time here. If anyone has questions and a mic to pass around.
So thank you for the great insights. My question is, looking from your experience, what's the number one thing that open source providers can do and are doing? What have you seen the number one thing to increase adoption and make adoption easier, right? Versus how easy it is to adopt commercial solutions, right? So how do you make sure that you keep that 80-20 mix?
So question is, what's the number one thing open source providers can do to help with that adoption? For future questions, I'm gonna repeat the thing because we've got one mic, but let's dig in.
I think there's going to be two pieces to it. If we go back and think about how machine learning was where, right, the think of PyTorch became the framework, the size of hosting that was a lot easier, right? And so the models, LLMs that are of that size, people will want to host. But the things that go beyond that is like, do I really need to own the compute for something this large? And that's where partnerships with the providers, right? Meta on Bedrock, Meta on Snowflake, that's going to be a huge piece to alleviate that. And so I think it's great to feel like, hey, I can host an LLM and I can do a lot of stuff, but there's also kind of like a balance of smartness versus compute versus infrastructure that I don't want to run. That we'll need to find a balance. And so it'll be a different ecosystem than it was in the machine learning world where like you could host everything and the open source libraries didn't really need an inference layer that was hosted for them. And so I think that's going to be a big change in the space.
You forgot about Meta on Together. But I think in general to like reach better adoption, we need inference providers that care a lot about the developer experience. And developers are smart and they're not there to get gimmicky tactics for growth. They just want something that works, that's easy to use, that is reliable, that they don't have to worry too much about, and they know it's going to be there for them, and their applications are going to keep running in production. So I think building that trust is going to be super important for inference providers, and then also making sure that the actual experience, the SDKs we provide, that we provide like common frameworks like OpenAI compatibility or like compatibility with other open source model providers.
I think to draw on my experience of the JavaScript world again, to your point, developer experience is paramount. People will accept enormous amounts of inefficiency in exchange for a really good developer experience. And I also think we've been talking about accessibility to people around the world. I think people don't understand quite how big the difference is between free and cheap when you're talking about the entire world. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago where, a free service I could use, no problem. A service that cost $1 a month was completely inaccessible. Simply because I didn't have a credit card. I didn't have a way to purchase that service. It didn't matter that it was cheap. I had no financial way of accessing something in the US. So open source wins a lot on just by being free and that being the ultimate developer experience.
I would add, so let's say you have an open source software that you want to get out there. I think the best way right now, as I said, is community. So doing events like this, getting your name in the developer community, start advertising on Hacker News, find where the developers are, and then start either tweeting about it, writing on LinkedIn, doing events. It's the same way as propagating any dev tool out there.
Awesome, yeah, so community, partnerships, DevX, all that. Few more questions. Anyone else has questions? We have time for like one or two more. Okay, well, we'll cut back time. tomorrow we've got breakfast, lunch. Come here, hack early. There's going to be networking. I think we have a slide or two more, but thanks again to all our panelists for sharing.
So yes, thank you everybody. That was actually the last panel for the night. So I just want to say a few quick words and then we can kick off the networking that of course already started. I just want to thank all the partners for supporting the event: Meta, MindsDB, Llama Index, Together AI, Autogen, Snowflake, Edge, Featherless, the AI Alliance, Restack, and Solotech. Tomorrow we have some interesting talks and workshops. Llama Stack Uncovered with Meta, from prototype to go live with Restack, building Gen AI apps with agentic frameworks with Mainframe, and data cleaning and RAG with the AI Alliance. So if anybody has any questions, any issues registering LabLab AI, please feel free to find me after this. Thank you very much and see you tomorrow. Enjoy.